All right, so today we're going to deep dive into something that everyone loves to hate talking about,
Oh, yeah.
debt. It can feel like this massive thing looming over you.
Right.
You sent over some really interesting sources on this, and I'm honestly kind of excited to unpack it all.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that always gets missed in these conversations is that it's not just about cutting back,
Yeah.
like living on rice and beans or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really about understanding what kind of debt you actually have.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're saying it's more nuanced than just like,
Way more.
okay.
Like debt is not just this big blob of owing money. You have to look at the different types.
Okay.
The source actually had this really great example. Like imagine someone has like a 20,000 balance on a credit card
Mm-hmm.
at like a crazy 18% interest.
Ooh, yeah.
And then they've got another card, maybe 80 or 10,000 on that one, but it's only at 15%.
Okay.
And then let's say they've got a student loan hanging over them for like $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
but that's at a much lower 8%.
Wow, okay, yeah. I see what you mean. That paints a completely different picture than just like the total amount of debt. Like that 18% one. Oof.
Yeah, that's going to be costing you way more than that student loan, even though the student loan's a bigger number.
Yeah, you're basically just throwing money away with those minimum payments.
Exactly. And that's where those, the popular debt repayment methods come in.
Oh, right,
Like the
right.
snowball and the avalanche.
Yeah, I always get those mixed up.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
So which one is which again?
Okay, so the snowball method, that's all about paying off your smallest debts first,
Okay.
no matter what the interest rate is. It's really about that psychological boost.
Oh, so you can like feel good about making progress.
Yeah, it's like knocking out those little wins to keep you motivated.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Now, the avalanche method, that one's more strategic. You tackle the debt with the highest interest rate first.
Even if it's like the biggest balance.
Exactly. Because you're going to save the most money in the long run that way.
Okay. So snowballs for motivation and avalanche is for like efficiency.
You got it.
Okay. I think I can remember that.
And speaking of efficiency, that's where our sources get into all these great tips for actually, freeing up some extra cash.
Yeah, like how do we actually make those payments happen?
Right. And it doesn't always have to be these huge lifestyle changes.
Oh, good.
It can be more about making smarter choices.
Okay. So what were some of the tips that stood out to you from the articles?
Well, there was one that I thought was pretty clever. They were talking about really scrutinizing your subscriptions.
Oh, like streaming services and stuff.
Exactly. Like, do you really need all those channels? Are you actually using that gym membership?
Oh, yeah. You're hitting
Hmm.
a nerve there. I think we've all been guilty of that at some point.
Totally. And even those small amounts, like 500 rupees here, 1,000 there, they can really add up.
For sure.
Then they had some other ideas like selling stuff you don't use anymore. Close electronics,
Yeah.
you know?
That's always a good one. Declutter and make some money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they even touched on side hustles.
Oh, yeah. Side hustles are huge these days.
Right. And, even if it's just a couple thousand rupees extra a month, that could go a long way towards tackling that high interest debt.
Yeah. I like how you put that. It's like giving yourself a raise specifically for paying off debt.
Totally.
I
It's all about being intentional with your money and making it work for you.
love that. Okay. So speaking of being intentional, the articles really emphasized avoiding any new debt while you're trying to get out of the old debt.
Mm-hmm.
Seems obvious.
Right. But probably harder to do in practice.
Yeah, for sure.
So they talk a lot about using cash or debit cards for everyday expenses.
Oh, yeah. That makes it so much more real.
Right. You really feel it when you see that money leaving your hand.
But they're not saying like all credit cards are evil, are they?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They actually had this really good analogy. They said it's like a climber knowing when to use a rope.
Okay.
Like sometimes it's essential for safety,
Right.
but other times it's just extra weight that's slowing you down.
So it's about being smart about it and knowing when credit is actually helpful and when it's just going to drag you down.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. I like that.
It's all about strategy.
For sure. So then what happens after we've like conquered this mountain of debt? What do we do next?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. So one of the sources had this really cool way of putting it. They said that becoming debt-free isn't actually the finish line.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more like reaching base camp.
Okay. I like that analogy. So we've climbed that first big mountain.
There's a whole range out there.
Okay. So then where do we go from there?
Well, that's where I think a lot of people get tripped up. They've been so focused on paying down debt
Right.
that they haven't really thought about what to do with their money after.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're just running a race without knowing where the finish line is.
Exactly. And that's where investing comes into play.
Okay, but investing always sounds so intimidating.
I know, right?
Like you need a ton of money to even get started.
Yeah. And you need to like understand all that Wall Street jargon.
Totally. But the source we're looking at actually did a really good job of breaking it down.
They did.
They were talking about how even like small regular investments, especially if you start early,
Mm-hmm.
can really grow over time because of this thing called compounding.
Ah, yes, the magic of compounding.
Remind me how that works again.
It's basically where the money you earn starts earning its own money.
Oh, right, right. It's like a snowball effect.
Exactly. The earlier you start that snowball rolling, the bigger it gets.
So even if you don't have a ton to invest right now, it's still worth starting.
Oh, absolutely. They even mentioned this study.
Mm-hmm.
It showed that someone who starts investing in their 20s could end up with way more money than someone who starts in their 30s,
Wow.
even if they invest the same amount every month.
That's crazy. Just because of the extra time?
The power of time. So yeah, definitely don't wait to get started.
Okay, that's good motivation. But how do you even choose the right investments? It all seems so complicated.
It can be,
Yeah.
but luckily there are way more options now than there used to be.
Really?
Yeah, the source was highlighting all these cool alternative investments.
Like what kind of stuff?
Things like real estate crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending.
Interesting.
You can even invest in startups now.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about like stocks and bonds anymore.
Nope. There are all these different paths you can take.
That's kind of exciting, actually.
It is. But yeah, it can also feel overwhelming with so many choices.
Totally. So how do we like narrow it down?
Well, they really stress the importance of having a financial plan.
Okay.
It's like having a roadmap for your investments.
I like that. So we need to figure out like our destination and the best route to get there.
Exactly. You got to know your goals, how much risk you're comfortable with, and you know how much you can realistically invest.
Right. But what about like those unexpected detours that life throws at you, emergencies and
Oh,
stuff?
for sure, those are going to happen.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have a good emergency fund.
Okay, yeah. Like a financial safety net?
Exactly. The source recommended having like 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up
Mm-hmm.
just in case,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you even do that when you're already like stretching to make ends meet?
Yeah, that's a valid question. They actually talked about that. They
Yeah.
said you got to really look at your budget
Okay.
and see where you can potentially cut back.
So it's back to those little things like those subscriptions.
Exactly. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, but it's so easy to like forget about those things or tell yourself, oh, it's just $10.
I know, right? That's why they were big on automating your savings.
What does that mean?
Basically setting up a system where a certain amount of money automatically goes into your savings account each month.
Oh, so you don't even have to think about it.
Exactly. It just happens.
Yeah,
It's like paying yourself first.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, paying down debt, building an emergency fund, investing. But honestly, the thing that stood out to me the most from these sources was how much they emphasized mindset.
Oh, yeah, mindset is huge.
It's not just about like the practical steps.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's about how we think about money.
Okay. So like, how does that actually work? How does our mindset affect our finances?
Well, think about it. If you're constantly stressing about money or telling yourself you're bad with finances,
Mm-hmm.
those negative thoughts can become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Oh, yeah. If you think you're going to fail, you probably will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you can cultivate a more positive and proactive mindset around money,
Okay.
that can really empower you to make smarter choices and reach your goals.
So it's like choosing to focus on the possibilities instead of the limitations.
Right. And they also talked about surrounding yourself with positive influences,
Oh, okay.
like reading books by financial experts or listening to podcasts or even just connect.
Okay. Like we've got our finances in order, we're investing for the future. But what does financial freedom actually look like?
Yeah, what does that actually mean to you?
Honestly, that's a really good question, and I don't know if I've actually thought about it.
Yeah.
Like I've been so focused on just getting my finances in order
Right.
that I haven't really stopped to consider what I want to do once I actually have more freedom.
It's funny, isn't it? One of the articles called it like destination drift.
Oh, I like that.
You're so busy just figuring out the day-to-day
Yeah,
that you kind of forget to actually set a course for where you want to go.
that's so true. Okay, so how do we avoid that? Do we need like a financial vision board or something?
Maybe. But no, really, that said the first step is defining what financial freedom actually means to you.
Okay.
Is it early retirement? Is it starting your own business? Is it traveling the world?
For me, I think it's about having the flexibility to pursue creative projects
All right.
and not having to worry about the financial side of things.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now you have a starting point.
Yeah.
And once you have that vision, it becomes so much easier to make financial decisions that actually align with your goals.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's say we've done all the things. We've paid down our debt. We've got our emergency fund. We're investing. We've got our mindset right. We've even figured out our long-term goals.
Right.
But, like, realistically, there are going to be bumps along the way, right?
Yeah.
Life happens.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Things change all the time. Interest rates go up. The economy takes a dip.
Right, or your car breaks down or something.
Exactly. So how do you stay adaptable?
Yeah.
Well, one of the sources had a great tip. They said to review and adjust your financial plan regularly.
Okay, so it's not just like a set it and forget it kind of thing.
No way.
Yeah.
You got to check in with yourself every so often.
Like, make sure you're still headed in the right direction.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to course correct if needed.
I like that. It's like checking the map every so often, being like, okay, are you still on track here?
Yeah. And sometimes you might need to ask for directions. Talk to a financial advisor or find a mentor.
Right, or even just join an online community or something.
Totally. There's so many resources out there.
This whole conversation has honestly been so helpful. I feel like we've had our own personal Sherpa guiding us through the world of personal finance.
I like that.
But yeah, we've covered so much ground, it's crazy.
We have, from those different types of debt to figuring out investing and building an emergency fund. We even talked about mindset, which I think is so crucial.
Totally. Okay, so if there's one thing our listeners should take away from this deep dive, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is that financial freedom isn't a destination. It's a journey.
Okay.
It's about making those conscious choices, building good habits, staying committed to your goals, even when things get tough.
So it's not just about reaching the summit.
Right.
It's about enjoying the climb along the way.
Exactly. Celebrate your wins, learn from your mistakes, and never stop exploring new paths.
Love that. And who knows, maybe one day you'll end up being the Sherpa for someone else.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into personal finance. Until next time, happy trails.